Hey everybody, Lance from Permanent Records back with another recent arrivals video. I only have a few minutes to do this video before I open the shop, so I'm gonna get right into it. These are some of the hand-picked selections from this week's recent arrivals, some of my favorites. Willis Allen Ramsey's Soul solo album. This is an amazing country rock album. And for those of you familiar with Captain and Tennille's hit Muskrat Love, the song was written by Willis Allen Ramsey originally, entitled Muskrat Candlelight. Amazing stuff. You have to check out Willis Allen Ramsey. I don't need to say much about Brian Eno, but we got a bunch of Brian Eno in this week's recent arrivals. That's Before and After Science, one of my favorite. Last week we had 2 copies of Dub Housing, the second Pere Ubu album. This week, 2 copies of The Modern Dance, the debut post-punk classic by Pere Ubu, Cleveland's own, I believe. Definitely Ohio, I think Cleveland. New York no wave fans are already familiar with Teenage Jesus and the Jerks. You may know Lydia Lunch. She was the front person for Teenage Jesus and the Jerks, and this album is amazing. You have to check that out if you're into noisy post-punk, aka new wave from New York in the early 80s. YMO, Yellow Magic Orchestra, Technodelic. This is such a great Japanese electronic album. Highly recommend listening to that and grabbing it, because it's an amazing album. You don't see it very often, especially in record store bins. They get bought immediately upon arrival. Communicant is a local LA band. Dylan Gardner is the brainchild behind this. This particular group. Communicant does 60s psych in a way that is as authentic as you could possibly ever hope for. This is their first album, I believe. Sun Goes Out came out in 2021. Just an absolutely beautiful album. The songwriting is impeccable, and the textures and tones and the guitar effects and the vocal effects, etc. Like, just everything about it sounds seriously, authentically 60s. Here's just one of the greatest albums of all time, Lust for Life. Iggy Pop is a legend. I don't need to say anything more about him, but that album always puts me in a great mood. This is the self-titled debut by Love, including the hit My Little Red Book from Nuggets. I mean, that's essential Los Angeles material right there. Everybody knows the Beatles, but have you listened to McCartney too? If not, you have to hear this album. This is McCartney home recording. He did this album himself in his home studio. Lots of electronic elements. It's really, really fun and danceable. The instrumental track Frozen Jap off here sounds kind of like that band Yellow Magic Orchestra. I have a feeling Paul was listening to a little bit of that and some Kraftwerk when he decided to put this amazingly odd record together. Coming up, you probably heard off of this, and anyway, this album is, I can't speak highly enough of it. It's kind of a novelty for his catalog, but it's a really enjoyable listen, and it's kind of a mind blow if you're not if you're not expecting that vibe. We got Townes Van Zandt, one of my all-time favorite singer-songwriters from Texas. We got High, Low, and In Between. That's an original pressing, from when it came out. I want to say 71. Don't quote me on that. Here's an audiophile reissue of one of the all-time greatest albums. This is The Velvet Underground and Nico, of course. They replicated the torso cover on the back. Got a Japanese obi, and it's just an audiophile pressing of that classic, so you know it's going to sound amazing. Diggable Planets, Blowout Comb. This is a modern hip-hop classic. If you don't know that already, you got to check it out. It's got mass appeal. Nilsson Schmilsson, Harry Nilsson is a legend, amazing songwriter, and this is my favorite album of his. Jump Into the Fire is worth the cost of entry alone. This album is absolutely stunning. It goes beyond the kind of quirky novelty hit Coconut. I'll put the lime in the coconut. That song's fine. The rest of the album is so much better than that song. And this one is a European pressing and has the original poster in it too. Speaking of Iggy Pop, we got Grace Jones, Nightclubbin'. She does a cover of Nightclubbin' on this album. So amazing. Grace Jones is just such a badass, and I like a lot of her records, and this one might be my favorite. It's really, really good. If you like synth pop and stuff from the 80s in general, pick that up if you don't have it already. Classic, one of my all-time favorite jazz albums, one of the best spiritual jazz albums there is, A Love Supreme. This is an early stereo pressing, not OG, but pretty early, and only 60 bucks, which is a steal for that record, I think. This, one of my favorite jazz albums of all time, partially because it was one of the first ones I bought. I saw this Jackson Pollock record. I saw Ornette Coleman in the bin somewhere in Missouri a long time ago. Bought this record for $20 with the die cut jacket, OG. Yeah, this is just a quintessential free jazz album, as you can see. And it's got a double quartet. One quartet is playing in the right channel, other quartets playing in the left channel, and it makes for a really, really mind-bending experience. Highly recommend Free Jazz by Ornette. Here's just a classic, Wish You Were Here by the Pink Floyd, but we also have the original shrink, not fully intact here, but we got the hype sticker and a postcard included. Hard to find it that way. We get that record fairly regularly, but not like that. David Byrne and Brian Eno right here, My Life in the Bush of Ghosts. This is a really cool album, really experimental, way ahead of its time. I think this is one of the first albums that included sampling. Don't quote me on that, but there's something like that going on here. This is just a great album by two legendary artists collaborating together. Shameless self-promotion. We got Basic Cable. This was a Permanent Records release back in, I don't know, 2000 something, pre-2010, I want to say. Anyway, Basic Cable were a really killer noise rock band. Real grungy stuff, kind of like Pish Jeans from Chicago. One and done. They did that one LP and that was about it. So The Cure, we got a couple of Cure records. We got a bunch of Cure records in the bins right now. Two of my favorites, Head on the Door and Boys Don't Cry, right there. I don't need to say anything more about those. As you know, we're always acquiring more jazz records. Here's just a couple of my favorite Art Blakey records out of this week's recent arrivals. So I'll show those off here. If you like what I was saying about the Paul McCartney album too, you got to check out this Giorgio Moroder album. This is an amazing electro disco record. Synthesizers galore all over this thing. It's super, super danceable, kind of craftworky at times, and just absolutely out of control. I mean, look at that mustache. You can't deny that mustache and those sunglasses. This is Giorgio. He's, in more recent times, collaborated with Daft Punk and is held in very high regard in the electronic music community. Bo Hansen. I've probably talked about Bo Hansen in previous videos. He's a Swedish musician, multi-instrumentalist, played a lot of keyboards, did a whole bunch of really great records, most of which were inspired by books. This one is inspired by Watership Down. He did another one inspired by The Lord of the Rings, etc. Amazing. Hard rock fans, and you know I'm one of those, take note. Trapeze's album, Medusa, amazing hard rock record. If you like Deep Purple and that sort of stuff, then you have to hear this album. It's absolutely stunning. It makes absolutely no sense that this album is as cheap as it is. This is an $8 copy. It's stunning. The cheapest, maybe one of the cheapest classic heavy rock albums. Yeah, if you like Wishbone Ash, Deep Purple, Uriah Heep, that kind of stuff, get down. All right, I gotta be quick here. Akron. This is a compilation of all bands from Akron on Stiff Records from back in the day. On here, we have the Bizarros, Tin Huey, the Waitresses, and Rubber City Rebels. We carry the Clone Records back catalog, original pressings of that. This is a nice little sampler of some of that stuff and some things that weren't on Clone from Akron, Ohio. We talked about David Byrne already. We got the Talking Heads Speaking in Tongues. Love that album. It's classic new wave. This is new wave also, maybe more post-punk actually, like reggae, very, very heavily reggae influenced post-punk. Basement 5. These recordings are not from 1965 to 1980. I'm not sure why this album is titled that, but it was produced by Martin Hannett, who also produced Joy Division. If you like Joy Division and you like reggae, Basement 5 must be heard. Classic power pop album right here, Cheap Trick's debut. Another album when I'm going for a jog, if I want a like real pick me up, like a instant mood enhancer, put on Cheap Trick. This album will put you in a great mood and pick your energy up immediately. It's just chock full of hits and has such a great late 70s power pop vibe. And last but not least, because I'm running out of time, Manfred Mann's Chapter 3. You may know Manfred Mann from Do Wah Diddy. Anyway, this is not that Manfred Mann. In 1969, Manfred Mann, I'm going to read off the back here. They disbanded after 5.5 years of successfully making hit records. Manfred Mann Chapter 3 was formed by Manfred Mann and Mike Hug, who had originally formed that group in 1963. And this LP was recorded between June and October of 1969 in the Old Kent Road, and represents in general what we have personally been wanting to do for some years. That's a quote from Mike Hug and Manfred Mann. This is a really, really vibey, almost, it's a fusion-y record because it's got horns on it. It's just unbelievable, idiosyncratic. Nothing else quite sounds like this. You have to hear this to believe it. Manfred Mann, Chapter 3. They did 2 albums under that name, this one, and there's a volume 2 as well. Both are absolutely amazing. And yeah, whatever. Show off a couple more things. Couple sealed Funkadelic albums, no big deal. We got an original pressing. This is a European pressing of the classic 90s album Siamese Dream, and a reissue of the 13th Floor Elevators, Easter Everywhere. Oh, and how could I forget the classic Red Album by Grand Funk Railroad, if we're being, you know, long-winded. Anyway, there's more in here. There's birds. There's, oh, give me a break. How can I not bring up Notorious Bird Brothers and Sweetheart of the Rodeo? But I'm out of time. I gotta open the shop. Thank you so much for watching this video. Please do me a favor. If you enjoyed this content and want me to continue making more videos, please subscribe to the channel, like this, leave me a comment, and ring the bell. Until next time, cheers.